She sat in the dust with a rough burlap sack covering her head, her dress nothing but shredded cloth clinging to her battered frame. Bruises covered her skin, and the people of Abilene walked past as though she were invisible, as though she were already gone. That was the sight that met Ethan Cole on a scorching day in the summer of 1885, a sight that would brand itself into him, deeper than any bullet wound or grave he had dug. He had weathered the worst this land could throw at a man, gunfire, thirst, and burying loved ones too soon, but nothing had ever struck him like this frail young woman. She could not have been older than 21, yet her body bore the exhaustion of a lifetime. Bare knees torn open, thin arms clutching the sack tight against her face, as if protecting her shame mattered more than the air she breathed. Her voice, barely more than a trembling breath, slipped through the burlap. "Please, don't take it off." Those words weren't only fear. They carried shame that sank its claws into Ethan's chest. She was starving, weak, lips split and bleeding, her breath shallow and ragged. And the town, his town, had turned their faces from her like she was some ghost haunting the dirt road. Ethan could not. Something in the way she clung to that sack told him her story was larger, darker than what met the eye. He stepped closer. The blazing sun seemed to dull, replaced by the stench of sweat, blood, and dirt. She looked as though the world itself had abandoned her, as if death had brushed against her and moved on. A man past 50 knows when a fight has already been lost. Yet in her fragile grip, there was still a flicker of defiance, a refusal to let go. And that stubborn spark cut through Ethan like a knife. He had seen cruelty before, but this was something different. This was innocence ground into the dirt. Something in him knew, without reason, that this girl was about to drag him into a storm he hadn't planned for. As the sun baked the streets of Abilene, Ethan Cole, widower, rancher, and a man with little left in this world, realized he was staring at a secret hidden behind burlap, a secret that would test him. The choice lay plain before him. Walk away like the others, or pull back the sack and face whatever truth waited beneath. He chose a path most men in town would never dare. He lifted her up from the dirt and carried her to his lonely cabin by the Smoky Hill River. The place wasn't much, just rough timber walls, a leaky roof, and a hearth to keep out the chill, but it was shelter. He gave her water first, then what little bread he had left. She devoured it like someone who hadn't seen food in weeks. For a brief moment, Ethan let himself believe the worst was behind them. She'd eat, rest, and recover. Yet deep down, he knew that sack was more than cloth. It was hiding something no meal could mend. Night settled in with the sound of crickets and the river whispering in the heat. Ethan finally broke the silence. "You don't have to keep it on. You're safe here." The girl froze, hands tightening around the burlap. Her breath sharp and panicked. Slowly, trembling, she let him pull it away. Beneath it, Ethan saw the truth. A scar burned across her face, raw and jagged, stretching down her cheek into her neck, curling like it had a life of its own. In the dim firelight, it seemed to shimmer, almost alive. Ethan had seen gunshot wounds, brands, scars from cattle stampedes, but never this. Tears welled in her eyes before he could speak. "They say it's the devil's handprint," she whispered, voice cracking. "That's why they cast me out. That's why no one will touch me." Ethan sat in silence, not looking at the mark, but at the girl. He knew Abilene too well. Hard-working folk, yes, but shackled to their old fears. In a land where storms wiped out crops and sickness stole children overnight, superstition filled the gaps. They didn't see a scar, they saw a curse. But to Ethan, she was just a girl unlucky enough to carry a face that frightened cowards. And he knew the truth of it. Once a lie takes root in a town, it grows deeper than oak. By giving her shelter, Ethan wasn't just showing kindness. He was setting himself against every whisper, every suspicion, every fool who believed her cursed. And trouble, he knew, was already riding for his door. The next morning, the sun blazed overhead as Ethan fetched water from the well. Inside, the girl slept curled up on his cot, the burlap sack lying defeated on the floorboards. His heart felt heavy. He couldn't lie to himself. Keeping her here wasn't an act of charity anymore. It was a choice, and one that dared the whole town to rise against him. It didn't take long. Samuel Briggs was the first. Everyone in Abilene knew him, though few cared to. loud in church, cruel to his ranch hands, quicker to spit than to laugh. That day he came to Ethan's door, boots coated in dust, eyes dripping with judgment. "I hear you tooken a girl," Samuel said, leaning against the doorframe like it belonged to him. His tone carried the town's whispers like a weapon. "Folks say she's a cursed one, the one marked by the devil." Ethan's jaw tightened. He stared him down. "She's just a girl," he said evenly. "Hungry." Briggs sneered as if he already knew the ending. "Bruised and half dead when I found her," he spat. His eyes cut toward the mark on Abby's face. "You think God put that there for nothing? Keep her here and you'll bring ruin down on all of us. Better cast her out before worse comes knocking." His words sliced like knives, sharpened on fear. That was always Briggs's way. Let dread do the fighting for him. But Ethan Cole had seen worse men than Briggs, and buried them too. He closed the door in the man's face, though he knew the matter wasn't settled. When one hound catches a scent, the whole pack won't be far behind. Inside, Abby's wide eyes told the truth before her lips could. She'd heard every word, and she had lived this scene too many times before. Town after town, house after house, it always ended the same, her being cast out into the dust. But Ethan's voice carried no wavering. "You're safe here," he told her. And for the first time in longer than she could recall, she almost believed it. Out on the frontier, a man's word could be worth gold or worth nothing at all. Ethan had just staked his on a woman the whole town wanted gone. That wasn't just mercy, it was rebellion. And when one man stands against superstition, it never ends quiet. By the following night, the whispers had spread like brush fire. Briggs had done his work well. Abilene was restless, and restless people never stayed quiet for long. Ethan heard the storm before he saw it. A roll of boots on dirt, angry shouts carried on the wind. When torches flickered down the road, he knew the whole town had come to his doorstep. They ringed his cabin, fear burning in their eyes, their voices rising like thunder. They demanded Abby be handed over. To them, she wasn't flesh and blood anymore. She was a curse walking. Ethan stepped onto the porch with his Winchester steady in his grip. "She stays," he said evenly. "She's under my roof. And as long as I live, not a soul here will lay hands on her." The mob pressed closer. Briggs bellowed louder than them all, calling Ethan a fool, swearing the girl will be the ruin of Abilene. The torches lifted higher, hungry to catch the walls. Ethan knew words wouldn't break that fever. He raised the Winchester skyward and fired. The crack ripped through the night, the echo rolling off the plains like thunder. Torches faltered. The mob froze. Silence fell heavy as stone. Ethan lowered the barrel, not toward them, but at the dirt between them, and spoke once. "Go home." For a long breath, no one moved. Then shoulders sagged, flames dipped, and boots began to drag back down the road. Briggs spat at the ground, vowing it wasn't over. The crowd followed him into the dark. Ethan stayed on the porch until the last torchlight was swallowed by night. He had won the battle, but the war? That was still coming. Inside, Abby trembled, her eyes searching for answers he didn't have. Fear and suspicion don't vanish with smoke. Ethan knew the town's hate had only been delayed. The next morning, the silence inside the cabin weighed heavier than any gun. Abby sat by the window, her fingers brushing the scarf that once belonged to Ethan's late wife. Ethan leaned against the frame, rifle never far from reach. Both of them knew peace wouldn't last. At dawn, Abby stepped outside, her gaze on the far hills glowing red with the rising sun. Her voice was low, but steady. "I can't stay, Ethan. They'll never let me be, and I won't have you carry this burden for me." He wanted to protest, to swear he'd stand against the world for her if he had to, but the look in her eyes silenced him. She had carried this curse her whole life. She knew the depth of fear better than any man could. She placed the scarf in his hand. "If you ever come looking, find me in the Sangre de Cristo Mountains." Her words carried a quiet kind of bravery, stronger than iron. Then she turned, bare feet on the dusty road, her figure shrinking into morning light until the town swallowed her whole. Ethan stayed long after she was gone, the scarf clutched in his hands. He had stood against men, faced down a mob, fired into the night to shield her. But in the end, love meant letting her go. It was loss, yes, but it was also a vow. Sometimes the bravest act isn't to fight harder, but to love strong enough to set someone free. And so this tale leaves a question with you. If you were Ethan, would you have let her walk away, or would you have followed her into exile? If you were Abby, would you have stayed to fight, or chosen freedom even at the cost of love? The old Wild West still whispers its truths. Courage isn't always found in the gun you raise, but in the heart you protect. If this story struck something in you, share it. Let others hear. And if you want more of the forgotten echoes from the frontier, stay with us. There are more rides ahead.